An Eritrean delegation arrives in Ethiopia ahead of landmark talks. The African Union announces that the Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo is under control. And a Muslim organization honors Hollywood projects and filmmakers who are changing the narrative. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin tonight with the hope that once bitter foes may become friendly neighbors. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed greeted an Eritrean delegation on Tuesday at the start of the first high-level visit in nearly 2 decades. The visit comes after Ahmed said earlier this month he would honor all the terms of a peace deal, suggesting that he might be ready to settle the border dispute. Olympic athletes, singers, actors and religious leaders were also at the airport, where Eritrean Foreign Minister Osman Saleh and other top officials were presented with garlands of flowers. The flags of both countries fluttered from lampposts in Addis Ababa, along with a banner reading, "Welcome." Eritrea won independence from Ethiopia in 1993, following a 3-decade liberation war, but conflict erupted between them once again in 1998 over their disputed border, with diplomatic relations broken off ever since. A new report on violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo says Congolese security forces and militia have committed atrocities that amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. It says those crimes include the killing and raping of women and children. The report by human rights investigators denounces what it calls a serious problem of impunity. It's based on interviews with 524 victims and focuses on violations in the Kasai region of the DRC. The year-long insurrection there has killed up to 5,000 people and forced 1.5 million others from their homes. Independent experts are calling on authorities to prosecute perpetrators and bring justice to victims. The Kasai region conflict was one of a series of deadly flare-ups to hit Congo around the time President Joseph Kabila refused to leave power after his mandate expired in 2016. The United Nations Agencies for Migration and Refugees is poised to, this week, present the European Union with a plan for regional disembarkation platforms around the Mediterranean, where the bloc could hold migrants and decide whether to admit them. Various EU states are expressing differing opinions of what such centers could comprise. France has said Italy could host the migrants, but Italy wants them to sit in Africa. The initiative still poses legal, security and rights challenges, but EU leaders now want the two UN bodies, the International Organization for Migration and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, to make a proposal and run such sites in the future with the EU money. A similar plan for Africa hotspots proposed 2 years ago by one of Europe's most hardline anti-immigrant leaders, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, was widely criticized as potentially violating rights of those who attempt the crossing. The U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday has narrowly upheld the Trump administration's travel restrictions on citizens of 5 Muslim-majority countries, handing President Donald Trump a victory in enforcing one of his most controversial policies. In a 5-4 decision, the court ruled that the president has the authority under U.S. immigration laws to limit travel from foreign countries on national security grounds, as the Trump administration has argued. Under the so-called travel ban issued in September, citizens of 5 Muslim countries, Libya, Somalia, Iran, Syria and Yemen, are barred from traveling to the United States. North Koreans and some individuals linked to the Venezuelan government are also barred from traveling to the U.S. The Central African nation of Chad was initially included in the list, but was later dropped. Angry over the constant flow of illegal migrants pouring over the U.S.-Mexico border, U.S. President Donald Trump now says all illegal migrants should be deported immediately without a trial. The White House said Monday it is running out of resources to keep migrant families together until their cases are heard by a judge. Here's VOA's Zlatitsa Hoke.
We care! Protesters gathered outside a detention facility in a Texas border town on Monday, demonstrating against criminalizing illegal migrants, many of whom are running away from poverty and terror. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said illegal immigrants must be prosecuted to ensure the safety of U.S. citizens.
It would be an insult to those who come here legally, waiting their turn, making their application, and most importantly, it would encourage and has already encouraged more adults to bring more children illegally on a dangerous journey that puts these children at great risk.
President Trump signed an executive order last week to stop separating immigrant children from their families, but now says that all those who come in illegally should be deported without any legal process.
We want a system where when people come in illegally, they have to go out.
Some rights advocates say what the president suggests is unconstitutional.
The framers of the Constitution said that due process applies to all persons, not all citizens, and they did that deliberately so that all persons, including non-citizens, would have the right to due process. That's in contrast to other provisions in the Constitution that specifically use the word citizens to say that it's off limits to non-citizens. Due process applies to everyone.
But the current immigration process can take 3 to 4 years. The White House press secretary on Monday warned that the means to maintain immigrant families while they await processing are running out.
The president is focused on securing our borders and reforming our immigration system to prevent the crisis at the border from getting worse.
The White House on Monday accused Democrats in Congress of rejecting any solution proposed by Republicans to fix the system. Trump says his predecessors have failed to secure U.S. borders and blames illegal immigration for a host of crimes in the United States. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, about 100 Muslim Americans are running for public office this year, many of them Democrats hoping to be a part of a blue wave in the congressional midterm elections in November. As VOA's Ken Farabaugh reports, while one former Michigan state legislator has her eyes on making history in the U.S. Congress, she is focusing less on her gender and her religion during the campaign and more on addressing the needs of the community she seeks to represent.
It's crazy.
Through the hottest hours.
Yeah, I need to invest in a swimming pool.
On blistering pavement that could fry an egg.
God, nobody has sprinklers on today.
Rashida Tlaib is walking door to door in this Detroit neighborhood in search of votes.
Yeah, so this is going to be a pretty competitive Democratic primary.
And she's doing so without eating any food or drinking any water during the day. That's because Tlaib is a practicing Muslim, which means she is fasting during the holy month of Ramadan.
I know that my faith comes up more on social media because they're not face-to-face with me, but on the doors I don't get it as much.
While others would stay indoors in the air conditioning, Tlaib views it as an opportunity to build name recognition as she seeks to represent Michigan's 13th district in the U.S. Congress.
People still can't pronounce my name, but they remember what I've done, and they remember that I've come to their home.
Tlaib is no stranger to politics, having served in Michigan's state legislature. She is the daughter of Palestinian immigrants, but on these Detroit streets, in a predominantly African-American neighborhood, she is a local, someone who was born here and attended schools in the area.
But it's that direct connection to the neighborhood that I think people are much more excited about.
She acknowledges few of the people she meets realize she is on the cusp of making history again.
And I tell them, you know, I'm the first Muslim woman ever elected in the Michigan legislature, and if elected in this congressional race, I'll be the first ever in Congress.
Is she a shoo-in? No. Is she a possibility? Yes, she is. She is a formidable candidate.
Osama Siblani is the publisher of the Dearborn, Michigan-based Arab American News, a weekly publication targeting the large Arab American population in southeastern Michigan. He says Tlaib's candidacy and that of two other races prominently featuring Muslim Americans in Michigan shows a new political awakening in the community.
We were at one time in hiding, you know, we were changing our names in this country. And despite September 11, despite the Trump era, you know, we are moving forward.
This is a pretty historic campaign. People that are supporting me, from this Muslima in Tampa who's like, please win, because if you win, we belong. And I'm telling her, we've already won, you absolutely belong. It means so much bigger than me.
For Tlaib to win, she will need support outside the Arab American community in Michigan, most of whom don't live in the district she seeks to represent and can't vote for her. Tlaib faces several challengers seeking to replace Congressman John Conyers Jr., who resigned in December amid allegations of sexual misconduct. The winner of the August 7th Democratic primary will likely head to Congress next year, as there is currently no Republican running in the November general election. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Detroit, Michigan.
India is the most dangerous place in the world for women. That's according to a new survey by the Thomson Reuters Foundation. About 550 experts on women's issues were asked to rank countries based on several issues, including sex abuse, discrimination, and access to health care. Now, the poll puts the Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, Nigeria, and the U.S. in the top 10 list of dangerous countries for women. Experts say India's top ranking shows not enough has been done to tackle the danger women face more than 5 years after a student was raped and murdered on a bus in Delhi. The attack made violence against women a national priority in the country. The U.S. ranked joint third and with Syria when respondents were asked where women most risk sexual violence, harassment, and coercion into sex. America ranks sixth for domestic and mental abuse.
You just are constantly dealing with verbal harassment. I'm just a little bit more pragmatic now about saying, like, okay, well, this is how you need to arm yourself to deal with these situations, because these situations are going to happen, and you need to know that's a reality, and you need to know how to defend yourself when they do happen.
Now, the poll was a repeat of a survey in 2011 that found Afghanistan, the DRC, Pakistan, India, and Somalia as the most dangerous countries for women. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still to come on Africa 54. Good news from the United Nations about the DRC Ebola outbreak. But first, a look at Tuesday's headlines.
In Nigeria, disputes between farmers and nomadic herders result in violence that leaves 86 people dead. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the lack of action in the increase of illegal logging of timber in the country is angering locals. And the Ugandan so-called carnivore program creates the Safe Kraal program to protect village livestock from wildlife attacks. In Senegal, Dakar Fashion Week 2018 spotlights the upcoming styles. Finally, in Morocco, British singer Jamiroquai joins the Moazzinin Music Festival in Morocco.
Well, it's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with an Ebola update. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. The African Union has announced that the Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been largely contained. John Nkengasong, director of the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, presented the recent situation of the epidemic at a press conference in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention deployed in May a team of 25 physicians, including epidemiologists, infection prevention and control experts, to support the government's efforts. The head of the African CDC believes the joint efforts of the international community, which includes the World Health Organization and Doctors Without Borders, along with the Ministry of Health of the DRC, will allow the country to contain the epidemic. Now, VOA's John Lyndon spoke to DRC's Minister of Health, Dr. Oli Ilunga, who elaborates on the Ebola outbreak.
Ministry of Health is the only institution which is in charge of protecting the health of the population. So, but our role was really to coordinate all the response. As you know, it was a government-led response, and the Ministry of Health was really leading the response and aligned all the partners. That many people, when they feel sick, the first people they go to seek treatment is the traditional healers. So we had to, from the beginning, to bring them in the game and to work with them. It took us a lot of discussion, information, to convince people that Ebola was not like an evil spell, but it was a real disease. But eventually, with communication, sensibilization, I think that now everybody accepts that Ebola is a disease. The biggest challenge, I think, has been a logistic challenge, because the outbreak started in a very remote area. So the logistic to bring human resources and equipment on the field was the biggest challenge. I think the vaccine had been a real game changer because it really helped us to break the transmission chain very quickly. I think that compared to the last year outbreak and compared also to the outbreak in West Africa, I think that the international community reacted very quickly. They were very quick on the response to raise money and also to send us some experts who really work with the government. My dream is to build a CDC in DRC, a Center of Disease Control in DRC. That's the first thing. I think the second will be certainly the logistics. I think if we could have our own capability to deploy resources and equipment and experts on the field is something very, very important for us, yes, in the future.
And that was DRC's Minister of Health. Now, globalization in the 20th century facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technology, but it also helped spread deadly germs and viruses around the world. A new exhibit at the U.S. National Museum of Natural History illustrates the impact of these sometimes lethal biological linkages and looks back at the deadliest and scariest epidemics throughout history. Maxim Moskalkov has more.
1918, 100 years ago, in the final year of the First World War, 50 million people were killed, not by enemy bullets, but by a more insidious foe, the Spanish flu. Proof, say scientists, that a microscopic virus can be more destructive than war. It's the subject of a new Smithsonian exhibit called Outbreak, which looks at the most lethal pandemics throughout history. The interactive exhibit shows past and present outbreaks of diseases around the globe and in real time. Right now, it warns visitors of a botulism outbreak in Kansas. And this interactive map shows how and where HIV is spreading in different parts of the world. And this screen tells us that currently more than 2 million people are infected by the HIV/AIDS virus in North America. The horrible consequences of deadly pandemics have been depicted in many contemporary works of fiction. But the question that many often ask is, how close does fiction match reality?
It's a very real idea, and probably worse these days because of how connected the world is. Anybody can get on an airplane and be anywhere in the world within 24 hours. And parts of the world that used to be inaccessible are now easily accessible by tourists, by industry. So people and animals are more connected than ever before. So the idea, the thought of a disease emerging in some exotic, faraway place and staying there is an antiquated notion.
Susan Murray at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute studies the way animals and humans exchange diseases, passing deadly viruses from one species to another.
The exhibit and also our global health program is founded on the principle of One Health, which is the idea that human health, animal health, and the environment are all very linked to each other. So if we're trying to save human lives or animal lives, we need to look at it as a more holistic approach to make sure we're taking all factors into account.
Awareness and education is something the U.S. National Museum of Natural History is good at. An expected 10 million people are expected to visit the popular museum to see the Outbreak exhibit during the 3-year run. Museum curators hope the exhibit sparks curiosity and an exchange of ideas, and hopefully not an exchange of viruses. Maxim Moskalkov for VOA News, Washington.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Vinny, back to you.
Well, Lino, thank you very much. And I'll be sure to watch Lino Modu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday, right here on Africa 54. Well, former U.S. President Barack Obama enjoyed huge popularity in Africa while he was president. The much-loved Obama returns to Johannesburg next month, hoping to promote inclusiveness and unity, not division. Zahir Kasim is in South Africa for an advanced look at Obama's visit.
5 years ago, President Barack Obama came to South Africa with a message of hope and youth empowerment, introducing the Young African Leaders Initiative to develop the next generation of African entrepreneurs, activists, and leaders. Next month, he returns to the Rainbow Nation to continue his work and to commemorate what would have been Nelson Mandela's 100th birthday. Backed by the Mandela Washington Fellowship, young leaders have convened in Johannesburg for a 2-day workshop. They tell VOA that for most in attendance here, Obama is more than just a former president.
I think Obama is an empower of young people. I think of him as somebody who has really given us young people a platform to express ourselves, a platform to display our leadership.
U.S. Ambassador Matthew Harrington says the conference is an important next step in their development.
Well, these fellows today were part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship class of 2017. This is the first continental conference we've had and a follow-up to their experience. So we're bringing 400 of them together to have a series, to meet each other again after their experience last year, and to have a series of panels and discussions about what comes next.
Nigerian optometrist Uchuma Udoha says her time with the fellowship gave her the skills she needed to help more people.
So with the fellowship, I also got some grants to provide eye care services to those in underserved communities. We actually developed eye test kits, which is like a kit that you can actually use to do an eye exam all by yourself.
For many here, Obama's legacy of hope and empowerment continues to resonate. Zahir Kasim, VOA News, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. At the recent Electronic Entertainment Expo in Los Angeles, gamers sampled the latest big budget creations. But it's not just games that are changing, it's how they are financed and purchased too. Rather than just touting new game features, Stockholm-based developer DICE offered an apology of sorts for its Star Wars game Battlefront 2 launched late last year. The issue stemmed from the game's use of in-game purchases, or so-called loot boxes, that allowed gamers to spend more money on potential rewards. Despite the backlash, developers are keen to explore the potential of in-game microtransactions. Well, and finally, across the USA, pet owners spent over $69 billion in their pets in 2017. Pet Food Express, a California chain of 62 retail pet shops, offers pet food and supplies with a focus on wellness, holistic treatments, and organic pet food. It partners with more than 100 non-profit animal rescue and shelter organizations and donates more than $1 million a year to those organizations. There is a big emphasis on natural and holistic dog and cat food. The focus is on quality ingredients such as genetically modified, organism-free and grain-free customized pet foods to relieve ailments such as probiotics to help digestive issues, as well as vitamins and minerals for longevity are also trending. And that's what's trending today. Well, many Muslims around the world are not happy with Hollywood's stereotypes of Muslims and Islam. But instead of protesting, the non-profit group Muslim Public Affairs Council created a Hollywood bureau to engage with filmmakers. It also honors those making a difference with the so-called Muslim Oscars. VOA's Vina Mubtadi reports from Los Angeles.
The prisoner we snatched last night is a courier for Imam Yassid Khalil.
In many Hollywood movies, Muslims are often portrayed as terrorists or nefarious villains. But that is neither accurate nor fair, says the Muslim Public Affairs Council, or MPAC.
You can show a critique of a culture, but it shouldn't be stereotypical. Stereotypical, it means when you take a grain of truth and you generalize it over a whole population. We want the accurate information about Islam and Muslims.
In an effort to dispel negative stereotypes, the MPAC Hollywood Bureau routinely engages with actors, filmmakers, and producers. The nonprofit organization also presents awards to filmmakers who are making a difference.
It's sort of like the Muslim Oscars. We call it the voice of courage and conscience. And that's really what our struggle is about, is creating that voice of courage and conscience to say, you know, I can scapegoat, I can stereotype, I can make a lot of money from that, but but that's really uncreative. What's creative is to deal with the complexity and still be very successful in Hollywood.
For the past 27 years, MPAC has given the media awards to individuals and projects who go against commonly held stereotypes to create dialogue and change. Such as the We the People art campaign and its iconic images.
Certain identities had just been insulted for months on end on television. We felt that it was necessary to lift up the identity of those who had been put down.
And Miss Marvel, a superhero from Jersey City who happens to be Muslim.
For many people, this character is their only exposure to Jersey City, only exposure to Islam, to depictions of Muslim people that defies the traditional Hollywood idea of, Islamophobic representations.
This year, MPAC recognized 3 people who they say are promoting diversity, inclusion, and social justice. They include Irish rocker Bob Geldof, who returned a Freedom of the City of Dublin award to protest the actions of fellow awardee Aung San Suu Kyi, who he says has allowed the killing of Rohingya Muslims. Joshua Saftel, creator of the Emmy-nominated series The Secret Life of Muslims.
You guys can laugh, you guys can smile.
And Lina Khan, the director of The Tiger Hunter, a movie about a young Indian Muslim pursuing the American dream. MPAC hopes the awards can help expose Hollywood stereotypes and increase the number of authentic and humanizing stories about Muslims and Islam in film and television. Fina Muptadi, VOA News, Los Angeles.
And that's our show. Thanks. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Today's episode won't cost you anything.
Freebie.
Let's see what this one is about.
Anna, I love my job.
Oh yeah? Why is that?
I get so many freebies from the bands I write about. CDs, t-shirts, water bottles, even tickets to see them perform.
Wow. The only freebie I ever got from my